They are trying to shut him down. He's become a threat, he's too dangerous, they are frightened that he's gotten too powerful. That is how many people see the allegations against Russell Brand, that they are largely politically motivated. Aware that the story was about to break, Brand took to Twitter late Friday night to strongly deny accusations of rape and sexual assault. He called them a coordinated attack by the mainstream media. Elon Musk replied, "Of course, they don't like competition." They, the mainstream media, the legacy media, them guys, the elites, they are trying to stop Brand, as though Channel 4 is reliving Anchorman.
The Channel 4 news team.
Someone else who thinks this is a coordinated media attack is Jordan Peterson. He tweeted out a link to the Times article saying, "Someone wants Rusty Rockets destroyed." Someone. Again, it's the shadowy them guys. And we know their agenda. They are not motivated by truth, but only by destruction. It's a theory, and it's certainly true that everyone is a motivated actor, Brand and Peterson included. But if our foundational response is to dismiss allegations because they come from the wrong people, then we have prized tribe over truth. And it does sound a little bit like what the Archdiocese of Boston said about the Boston Globe. As the Boston Globe shone its spotlight on the church's abuse, they too considered it a coordinated attack by the mainstream media, and they too tried to dismiss the accusations initially because the journalists were secular or anti-Catholic or whatever. I'm not saying this case is like that case, but I am talking about a tribalistic reaction that decides in advance that truth matters less than tribe. Andrew Tate also joined in, obviously, because if an embattled Russell Brand needs anything, it's the offer of allyship from a man charged with human trafficking, rape, and forming an organised crime group. Tate tweeted, "Welcome to the club, Rusty Rockets." Now, the very idea that there is such a club gives me the ick so strong it feels like my spinal column is vomiting. Lawrence Fox also added to the mix with an early defense of Brand. At least Fox began to watch the Dispatches documentary on Channel 4. He live tweeted the first half of the show with gems like, "Half an hour in, Russell is still horny. Does this get better? I'm a bit tired." For those who haven't seen the documentary, the first 20 minutes is taken up by an absolutely harrowing and completely credible allegation of rape. And that's what Lawrence Fox affects to find tiresome. Now, you might well say, as Fox does, that criminal allegations should be tried in a court of law, and I absolutely believe that, as regards criminality, I do not know if this allegation is true, and legally, I consider Brand innocent until proven guilty. But A, none of this is a yawn fest. B, the criminal aspect of what's been unearthed is only one part of what's concerning here. And C, it's Brand who has used the media to tell a story about his sex life for years. He is the one who has had the microphone for the last decade or two, and with it, he has celebrated his aggressively acquisitive sexuality. He has done it to great acclaim and been rewarded handsomely. It might be time we heard from some of the women. Maybe we could let one or two of them frame those encounters from their perspective. We have heard Russell Brand on his years of promiscuity. He has definitely been able to get out in front of this story. For 15 years, he's gotten out in front of it, and he has framed it in his own way. He has portrayed his volcanic libido as some cheeky chappy comedy pirate shtick.
I like to have it off, right? As sort of, thanks, yeah. Why not? Yeah, let's cheer the idea of sex.
And if an entire career has been built on being sexually transgressive, I'm not sure why any of us are shocked that some of Russell Brand's women have felt sexually transgressed. Russell Brand, awarded Shagger of the Year 3 years running by the Sun newspaper, has boasted of 80 sexual conquests a month at the height of his powers. But now, looking back at those thousands of sexual encounters, he is, today, absolutely adamant that none of them crossed a legal line. That might be true. And let us, on a point of principle, presume that that's true until proven otherwise in a court of law. And let's understand that even if all those thousands of encounters were entirely legal, he could still have wronged people, egregiously, appallingly, diabolically, in ways that the courts would not and could not adjudicate on. He could be legally innocent and morally corrupt. And this is where I will ask you to put on a pair of Christian spectacles, even if you're not yourself a Christian. Is it possible that Russell Brand's behaviour is not criminal, but is worse than criminal? It's sinful. And maybe you think, I can't be doing with medieval terms like sin. And yet here we are, surveying a situation in which legal categories are insufficient, in which we know that there is wrong, but the law of the land may not be able to capture that wrong. I mean, we know this, don't we? Think of one of the women, the one known as Alice. She had a relationship with Russell Brand, which he initiated when he was 30 and she was 16. And many online are saying, oh, well, no harm, no foul. The legal age of consent is 16, so nothing to see here. But what? If she was 15 years, 11 months, and 29 days old, it would be completely wrong, but a few days later, it's completely okay? Is that how it works? And you might say, well, no, the law has to draw a line somewhere. Laws have to draw a line. They are to some degree arbitrary. And that is my point, actually, that the law does not and cannot properly adjudicate on whether something is truly right or wrong. We need a different kind of measurement. We need the language of sin. And with the language of sin, we can say, before and besides any legal pronouncement, Russell Brand was sinning with that girl, horrifically. That's why I don't understand Christian leaders taking the line, we cannot comment on any of this until or unless a court of law convicts Brand of illegality. I'm like, well, don't we even believe in sin anymore? He was clearly sinning. And we should all know that consent, as defined in a court of law, is really difficult, especially when there are power imbalances and age imbalances. Alice herself agrees. The Sunday Times article says, Alice has decided to speak out because she now believes that she was too young to be able to consent to a relationship with an adult man, and that the law should be used to protect under 18s. We need protection. And consent all by itself is insufficient to handle the power of sex and the vulnerability of the partners. But consent seems to be all we have. Louise Perry wrote in The Case Against the Sexual Revolution that nowadays consent is the only moral principle left standing under the reign of sexual disenchantment. And she points out the problem is the presence of consent is such a very, very low bar, an absolute bare minimum requirement, not an ideal. We used to have an ideal about what sex was about. We used to have an enchanted view of the world and of sex. In Christianity, sex is called one flesh, and it's the act that belongs in a lifelong union that is also called one flesh. The other name for that one flesh union is marriage. And marriage is a covenant union where husband and wife pledge themselves to one another, saying, all that I am I give to you, all that I have I share with you. That covenant reflects the love of Christ for his people. He's the one who gives himself for us on the cross so that we can be one with him forever. And that covenant is meant to be portrayed in this pattern of husbands and wives loving each other and uniting to each other. Historically speaking, this notion of covenant is where our idea of consent came from. In the New Testament, in Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, he wrote that husbands belong to their wives every bit as much as wives belong to their husbands, and the two should only come together by mutual consent. An utterly revolutionary idea in the ancient world. From covenant came consent. But now, as Louise Perry says, we've lost our ideals, we've been disenchanted. We no longer believe in the covenant love of Jesus, and we no longer have a covenant-based view of sex. We've removed sex from the context of covenant. So now the sum total of our sexual ethic is what two consenting adults or 16-year-olds get up to is a moral-free sandbox. Go for it. That's the dogma. How's it working out for us? Well, it works really well for sex addicts and libidinous Lotharios. It works very well for sexually voracious 30-year-olds who leverage their wealth, their fame, their power, their experience, and their legal teams in order to target 16-year-olds who are apparently fair game. It works really well for them. And that's why I began the video the way I did. They're trying to shut him down. He has become a threat. he's too dangerous. They're frightened he's gotten too powerful. Those are not the fears of the mainstream media about a popular YouTuber. Those are the legitimate fears of vulnerable women concerning sexually voracious men. And historically, the thing that has attempted to curb the acquisitive sexuality of elite men is Christianity. More than anything else in history, it's Christianity that has tried to train and restrain male sexuality. Ask Joseph Henrich, ask Kyle Harper, ask Tom Holland, ask Louise Perry. The Christian church has very often failed at its own sexual ethic. It has very often been terrible at practicing what it preaches, but its sexual ethic has insisted that men be as disciplined with their sexuality as women had always been expected to be. In Christianity, covenant, marriage, ties a man to his sexual partner and to his children. But with de-Christianization, what happens? When you blow off covenant, when you blow off marriage, who benefits? It's the Russell Brands who really benefit. Disenchant sex, get rid of covenant, build everything on consent only, and you leave the field wide open for predators. Because on the consent-only paradigm, you assume that sex is like any other good or service that can be traded freely. And it's a genuinely frightening moral framework to bring to bear on something as powerful and as dangerous as sex. I mean, with sex, you have two people with no one else around. They are at their absolutely most vulnerable. They are naked. They are very possibly drunk. The physical differences between the sexes are at their most pronounced. And with this moral framework, you tell these people that the most morally significant question that determines the legitimacy of everything that follows is whether or not someone articulates the word no. If there's no no, it's all go. The consent-only framework treats sex like it's one more good or service to be traded, or one more leisure activity to be enjoyed. And it treats sexual partners as completely equal, rational actors, and there's no social or physical or emotional or financial pressure, is there? They're just consenting adults, right? And they're both sober and in control of themselves, yeah? And there's not a massive power imbalance, is there? Or vast difference in upper body strength, surely? And there's no age gap, I hope. They're just consenting individuals. A consent-only framework does not make sense, and you know it doesn't make sense. Look at the Russell Brand case. Whether or not anything gets to court, you know sex cannot be disenchanted. You know sex is not just a leisure activity. If it was just a leisure activity, then Russell Brand deserves some one-star reviews on TripAdvisor. But you know that these allegations are much more serious than that. Sex is not just a leisure activity. It cannot be disenchanted. Here's something else you know. You know that morality is far more than what the law of the land pronounces upon. Look at this case and you realize it's not most deeply about illegality, it's about sin. You might not be used to using a word like sin, but we need a heavy word. It's a heavy thing. And here's another thing you know. This case teaches you that sexual ethics is not simply a matter of consent. There must be consent. But there must be more. And the Bible says there is more. There is covenant. There is a lifelong bond that is strong enough to hold something as powerful as sex. There is a triple insulated fireplace which can handle the holy fire that is sex. It's called marriage. And this covenant-based view of sex is still and will ever be the world's most romantic view of sex. It's the safest place for sex, all other things being equal. And it's the view of sex and family that has in fact built the world you live in. More than all that, the covenant of marriage is itself a picture of the ideal loving union. Jesus commits to us with an unbreakable, protective covenant love. He does not use his power to exploit us, or use us, or demean us, or silence us. His love is safe. His love is enduring. His love is dignifying. In a dangerous world, there is someone you can trust. If you want to find out more about Jesus, we have a new course called 321. It's Life According to Jesus, and it's designed as a Christianity 101 that assumes no prior knowledge. On the 2nd of October at 8 p.m. UK time, we'll be introducing 3212. Click the link and sign up. We would love to see you and discuss more about Jesus' vision for God, the world, and you. I'm Glenn from Speak Life. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you can, I'd love to see you on the 2nd.